Let's summarize the book, The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. A life-changing tool that millions of people can't stop talking about. Introduction. Mel Robbins' The Let Them Theory is a short, sharp handbook for reclaiming your inner life from the exhaustion of trying to control other people. The book grew out of a personal collapse and a single, domestic moment that turned into a global mantra. 2 words you can say to yourself when your energy is being drained: let them, and a prompt to redirect that energy: let me. Read as a continuous story. The book traces Robbins' low point, her discovery of the phrase, and dozens of real-world scenes that show how the idea works in practice. Below is a chapter-by-chapter narrative retelling with expanded detail so each lesson lands like a lived scene rather than a slogan. Chapter 1. The Scene of Collapse. Robbins opens in medias res: debt, insomnia, frozen mornings, and a life that no longer matches the person she intended to be. The prose leans cinematic. Small rituals that kept her stuck, snoozing, scrolling, numbing, are shown one after another until the reader feels the weight. This chapter isn't just confession, it explains the mechanics. When we try to fix everything externally, we lose the internal fuel to act. Robbins introduces the idea that action, small physical moves, was once her lifeline, and that the opposite behavior, micro-avoidances, had become a slow suffocation. She gives a scene-level memory of the moment that mattered: the frantic effort to orchestrate a prom night for her son, the pressure to control outcomes, and the offhand comment from her daughter that cut through the noise. That domestic intervention is framed like a pivot shot in a movie. The smallest line becomes the film's motif. The takeaway is clear: the story of how she found the idea feels personal, so you can imagine it applied to your own small, repeated collapses. Chapter 2. The 2 words that changed everything. This chapter rewinds and explains the prom moment in slow motion. Robbins reconstructs what she was trying to control: her reputation, other people's decisions, and the future outcome, and shows how that energy was wasted on things outside her power. The daughter's "let them" feels like a slap and a release at once. Robbins describes the cognitive and emotional aftershock: immediate relief, a sudden drop in adrenaline, and a surprising space to choose. Robbins then pairs the phrase with its necessary complement: let me. She narrates a practice scene. After saying "let them," she deliberately asks herself, what do I want to do next? The chapter teaches a 2-step ritual. 1. Interrupt the reflex to control or react. 2. Choose one small, intact action you can take that honors your values. The rhythm is cinematic: pause, breathe, act, and the result is a calmer, clearer momentum. Chapter 3. How Stress Hijacks You. Robbins turns toward the science in human terms. Rather than dense explanation, she uses short portraits: a parent snapping at a teacher, a colleague spiraling after an email, a friend obsessing over a like count. Each vignette converts physiology into story. The amygdala lights up, the body readies for fight or flight, and the rational part of the brain goes offline. You feel the steam rising in each scene, so the solution, saying "let them," lands as a practical way to pull the handbrake on that reaction. She walks the reader through what it feels like physiologically and then narrates how the 2-word tool interrupts the cascade. Robbins shows the technique working in tiny moments: on a crowded train, in a tense meeting, and the steady reduction in tension becomes its own dramatic arc. Small wins that add up and teach the body a different script. Chapter 4. Everyday Tests and Micro-Drama. This chapter is a parade of everyday irritations that function as test scenes for the theory. Robbins describes lines at checkout, being ghosted, and social slights as mini-dramas where old habits want to rerun. Each example is written as a short story: the trigger, the automatic reactive script, the choice to say "let them," and the tangible outcome. The narrative keeps things lively because the reader recognizes themselves in the scenes. Robbins also offers textures: the inner monologue, the physical sensations, the small decisions that follow. She demonstrates that the tool doesn't erase feelings, it changes the story you tell about them. The result is a readable manual for spotting triggers and practicing the pause. Chapter 5. The Social Mind and Fear of Judgment. Here the book deepens into the social brain: why we care what others think, how reputation functions as short-term survival currency, and how external validation becomes addictive. Robbins uses personal and client stories to dramatize the cost of living for other people's opinions, missed opportunities, stunted creativity, and the slow erosion of identity. She then shows how "let them" creates a psychological firewall. It doesn't make you indifferent, it frees you from living as your critic's agent. Robbins narrates a few scenes where she either withheld a talk or published it despite the fear, demonstrating how choosing "let me" to speak, to create, to start, rewrites the arc. The chapter reads like a charge to reclaim authorship of your life. Chapter 6. When People Act Like Children. Robbins likens adult emotional manipulation to toddler tantrums in adult bodies: silent treatment, guilt trips, outbursts. Each vignette is vivid: the colleague who escalates, the partner who withholds, the parent who uses shame. By staging these episodes, Robbins normalizes the experience and then demystifies how to respond without shrinking. She coaches readers on neutral witnessing, see the reaction, don't match the energy, state what you will or won't do, and step back. The storytelling emphasizes dignity. Your response can be calm, firm, and compassionate without being rescuing. The teaching is layered, practical scripts, internal cues, and the emotional payoff of holding steady. Chapter 7, Rescue, Enablement, and Tough Love. This chapter unpacks the difference between support and rescue through concrete rescues gone wrong. Robbins tells longer client stories where well-intentioned interventions prolong problems. She contrasts these with cut-to-the-chase moments where the right move was to step back and let consequences land. The narrative tension is higher because real costs and ethical stakes appear. Robbins also offers alternative behaviors, how to hold people accountable while keeping love, and uses scene work to model those conversations. The guiding principle is that helpfulness doesn't require you to carry the outcome, let them, preserves your energy and lets others face their consequences. Chapter 8, Friendship, Auditions, Fades, and Reprieves. Friendship is treated like a series of short films, the early chemistry, the seasonal drift, the quiet ending. Robbins narrates how some friends simply stop matching investment and how chasing them only deepens the wound. Each example illustrates the emotional logic of letting go and invites the reader to see fades as information, not failure. She also gives scripts for trying again, how to invite reciprocity without clinging, and how to accept when the answer is no. The tone is pragmatic and tender. Robbins honors loss while illuminating the dignity of choosing friendships that match your life. Chapter 9, Romance and Reciprocity. Romantic scenes in this chapter place stakes higher. Robbins narrates mismatched relationships where one partner repeatedly asks, "Why don't you change?" She shows how attempts to fix the other partner are exhausting and ineffective and how saying, "Let them," brightens your view. You see the pattern, you stop trying to do their inner work, and you decide whether to stay based on reciprocity. She walks through exit conversations and repair attempts, offering words that sound human rather than rehearsed. The narrative power here comes from real consequences. Staying means continued depletion, leaving clear space. The chapter leaves the reader with a clear litmus test for love that serves rather than drains. Chapter 10, Comparison as a Tool, Not a Trap. Robbins reframes comparison from a corrosive force into a diagnostic instrument. Using stories of creators and professionals, she shows how you can study someone's work without absorbing their story as a measurement of your worth. The narrative oscillates between envy-driven spirals and strategic curiosity. She teaches a rehearsal, notice the twinge of comparison, say, "Let them," then ask, "What can I learn?" The chapter makes clear that comparison becomes fuel when redirected into curiosity and craft, and Robbins stages small laboratory experiments you can try to transform jealousy into actionable insight. Chapter 11, Decision-Making and the Wrong Feeling. Often the right choice feels wrong, and this chapter dramatizes the cognitive dissonance. Robbins recounts decisions that led to immediate pushback, family shock, social criticism, inner doubt, and shows how the let me practice steadied her during the noisy aftermath. She invites the reader into the awkward time after making a boundary, the flinch, the second-guessing, the external narrative that follows. The chapter's arc is patient, stay with the discomfort, test the decision against values, and let outcomes unfold. Robbins narrates the relief that comes when right decisions eventually feel like house guests who settle in, not because critics changed their minds, but because your life adjusted to truth. Chapter 12, Parenting with Less Control and More Trust. Robbins shifts to parenting, especially teens and adult children. She narrates the transition from micromanaging to coaching, with scenes of arguments about curfews, career choices, and independence. Each story shows the pain of letting go and the subtle art of staying emotionally present without stepping into control. She gives practical steps, clear expectations, consequences that are followed through, and modeled calm that read like rehearsals parents can practice. The tone is humane, boundaries come from love, not abandonment, and "let them" keeps you from turning affection into overbearing anxiety. Chapter 13, Workplace Drama and Authority. This chapter stages common workplace dramas, micromanagers, missed credit, and the fear of looking weak. Robbins narrates scenes of workplace misalignment and explains how trying to control colleagues is both futile and reputationally risky. Instead, she models a different script: clarify your role, do the work, address breaches with facts, and let outcomes follow. The storytelling includes a few longer client case studies where changing the internal narrative, saying, "Let them," shifted how people engaged and reduced stress. Robbins gives concrete phrasing for awkward conversations and shows how your calm can be a strategic advantage rather than a concession. Chapter 14, Saying No Without Shame. Saying no is dramatized across personal and professional scenes. Robbins tells the story of a woman who could never decline favors and the slow burn that followed. Through narrative, Robbins shows how practicing small, unimportant no's builds the muscle for big, life-protecting ones. She provides short scripts and rehearsals embedded in stories so the reader hears tone, context, and consequence. The chapter's arc moves from guilt to clarity. No becomes a healthy boundary that opens space for the things that matter. Chapter 15. When people leave, let them. Breakups, job exits, and social splits are rendered as endings that hurt but also clear clutter. Robbins writes scenes of friends and partners walking away and focuses on the ritual of grief followed by reclamation. Let them. Here is a form of acceptance that doesn't mean erasure of the relationship but recognizes limits. She narrates the grieving steps and then the practical rebuild, new rituals, new investments, and small acts of starting again. The storytelling is both elegiac and pragmatic. Endings open room to pursue what you actually want. Chapter 16. Reclaiming time and energy. This chapter stitches earlier lessons into concrete habits, micro-rituals to preserve attention, how to triage other people's needs, and ways to protect creative or working time. Robbins uses everyday scenes, parenting moments, email floods, social invites, to show how the let me practice functions as an energy audit. Read as a narrative. The chapter shows progressive wins, less reactivity, more focus, and a growing set of moments where the protagonist chooses her weeks with intention rather than defaulting to everyone else's calendar. Chapter 17. Practicing the mantra live. Robbins turns the book inward, offering practice sequences and rehearsal scripts anchored by client vignettes. The narrative reads like a coach on the sidelines. Here's a practice for the next meeting, here's a way to rehearse a hard conversation, here's a nightly ritual to lock in boundaries. Each practice is situated in a scene so the reader can hear how it might unspool in life. The payoff is incremental competence. Moments that used to derail you become opportunities to rehearse a new identity. Robbins' voice is encouraging and practical, making the practice feel achievable. Chapter 18. How to stay compassionate without rescuing. Returning to the theme of love with limits, Robbins gives longer examples of care that preserves boundaries, sick parents, struggling friends, and colleagues who fail. She dramatizes the tension between empathy and codependence and shows how to act from a place of steady compassion that honors both parties' autonomy. The stories in this chapter are emotionally textured. You can feel the tug of responsibility and the release that comes when you choose a healthier stance. Robbins frames the practice as adult love, present, thoughtful, and appropriately limited. Chapter 19. Integration, rituals that stick. Robbins offers a practical, narrative-driven plan for integrating the theory, morning checks, pre-meeting mantras, and post-conflict debriefs. Each ritual is shown inside a short scene so the reader visualizes using it, on a commute, before a difficult call, or after a social slight. The chapter emphasizes iteration. The tool gets better with repetition. The quieter sequences of practice are presented like film cuts across weeks, demonstrating how small moves change the storyline of an ordinary life. Chapter 20. The social life you actually want. This chapter lays out the aspirational result, relationships that are less draining and more elective. Robbins narrates the shift from frantic people-pleasing to curated connection, friends who match you, colleagues who respect boundaries, lovers who reciprocate. The voice is hopeful but realistic. Not everyone will stay, but the people who do will fit the life you want to build. She provides scene scripts for invitations, soft departures, and cultivating new communities, leaving the reader with a sense of how social life can be redesigned rather than endured. Chapter 21. The Let Me Era. The book's coda is quieter and reflective. Robbins revisits the early collapse and compares it to life after practicing the theory, less reactivity, more creative focus, and a steadier sense of self. She narrates a day in the life vignette where small failures no longer derail the protagonist, instead they become data points for recalibration. The final image is not dramatic fireworks but a steady desk lamp burning late into the evening, work done with intention rather than compulsion. The reader is left with a practical invitation. Try the 2 words in a small, everyday moment tonight and watch what changes. Conclusion. The Let Them theory succeeds because it is simple, narratively rich, and eminently usable. Robbins teaches through scenes, real people, real stakes, real consequences, so the reader learns how to apply a 2-word pause and a 1-line redirection in any fraught moment. The craft of the book is its insistence that control is an illusion and agency is built by returning your energy to the one person who can use it. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to check the full version of the book on description. You subscribe help us to grow. See you on next book.